All right. Hello, people of YouTube land, and those that follow Ted and I on Twitch. Also, people that follow the Ted Green Eagles Discord. Well, I guess part of the Ted Green Eagles Discord. And those that are listening to this on Spotify or whatever format we decide to put this on. I am Traductus.
And I'm Ted.
And this is the movie review podcast.
Oh man,
I wonder if we came up with this so that way there'd just be the there's always going to be one.
I don't think we're ever getting out of here without one anyway.
Right. Perks of doing this on a Sunday morning.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, this is the movie review podcast where Ted and I take a director's filmography and we review each movie one by one. And we are still on Sam Raimi, although we are finally on Spider-Man 3. And which means after this we got 3 more movies left, which is kind of funny how that pans out.
Yeah.
But that being said, Spider-Man 3, this movie was released on April 16th, 2007 at the Roppongi Mills Mori Tower. Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, Hills, not Mills. Excuse me that I can't speak Japanese. Wow, this was released in Japan first. Huh.
Oh man,
it's like most RPGs. But after that, it was released in the United States May 4, 2007, and had a budget of $258 million. And at the time, this was the most expensive film made.
I think I can believe that.
That being said, the box office return was $895.9 million. So,
God damn.
Yeah.
People really like their Tobey Maguire, huh?
So, a huge box office return for, a movie that people kind of remember being shit. But that being said, we'll go into the background in this. Development actually kind of started in 2004 because Spider-Man 3 was already greenlit while Spider-Man 2 was being made. And it was developed for release in the summer of 2007. Obviously, they were ahead of schedule. That being said, after Spider-Man 2's release, Sam Raimi's brother, Ivan Raimi, wrote a treatment over 2 months, and Sam Raimi decided to use the film to explore Peter learning that he is not a sinless vigilante, and there can also be humanity in those he considered criminals. Obviously, Harry Osborn was going to be brought back to conclude his storyline. And Raimi felt that Harry would not follow his father's legacy, but instead be somewhere in between. He also decided on the antagonist Sandman because Raimi found the character very, very visually fascinating. While Sandman is a petty criminal in the comics, the screenwriters created a background of the character being Uncle Ben's real killer to increase Peter's guilt over Uncle Ben's death. And also Raimi wanted the overall film to be about Peter, Mary Jane, Harry, and the Sandman, and with Peter's journey of forgiveness. Raimi also wanted another villain, and oddly enough, I thought it was just going to be the symbiote suit. That's always what I heard it was supposed to be, but fun fact, it actually was going to be a completely different villain, and that is the Vulture, which we would get in the first Tom Holland one. And guess who was supposed to play the Vulture? And no, it wasn't Michael Keaton, although, damn, that was a good freaking casting in that.
I don't know. I there's so many names that I could pull that would feel decent, but
Ben fucking Kingsley.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that sounds so good. um that being said, producer Avi Arad ended up convincing Raimi to include Venom, which is because he wanted a character that was more relatable to modern audiences, obviously, because anybody that watched the Spider-Man cartoon was obsessed with Venom.
Well,
And also
and at this point in time, too, I know we're not doing background for the actual Venom movies that eventually got made, but like Sam Raimi was approved to make a Venom movie as like one of 4 different directors who was greenlit from various different places before we actually really got a Venom movie. So like this was supposed to spawn that as well.
Yeah, and Raimi actually was kind of against it because he didn't care for Venom's lack of humanity. Although Raimi went for it because Venom's alter ego Eddie Brock already had a minor role in the script, and uh, Raimi ended up including Venom to please, the producers. It's also why Glenn Stacy ends up getting involved in this. That being said, I guess we'll go into the casting of different people here. We're gonna go with Thomas Hayden Church as Flint Marko, the Sandman. They don't really give like different alternatives of like who could have been, the people who played, certain people. But Thomas Hayden Church uh, ended up being approached for Sandman due to his award-winning performance in the movie Sideways, which is, also has Paul Giamatti in it, who doesn't he play the fucking Rhino in like one of the other Spider-Man movies?
I don't remember. You might be right, but at this moment in time I can't pull it from memory.
What is it up with all these things being goddamn linked?
Nobody's got any creativity in Hollywood anymore. It's why we've got 3 goddamn Spider-Mans.
But right. That being said, Church actually accepted the role despite there not being a script at the time, and he basically kind of approached it like the sympathy. Sympathy exhibited by characters such as the Wolfman in Lon Chaney Jr.'s portrayal of the Wolfman and the Wolfman, which we also reviewed. If you want to check back at previous episodes. And Church actually worked out for 16 months to improve his physique for the role, gaining 28 pounds of muscle and losing 10 pounds of fat. And he actually very much enjoyed playing the role. We also have probably the most controversial casting out of all this, but we'll get into whether we like this casting or not. Topher Grace as Eddie Brock Jr. He actually ended up getting the role due to his role in his performance in the film In Good Company. And with him being a big comic book fan, he read the first Venom stories as a kid. So he also really loved this role. And he actually gained 25 pounds of muscle for this, which,
he wasn't the tiny little scrawny stoner he was in that 70s show. So, yeah.
Right. And he approached the character as someone who was under the influence, as similar to an alcoholic or a drug addict, and interpreted him having a bad childhood, which is a key difference between him and Parker. Topher Grace unfortunately found his costume to be unpleasant, as he had to be constantly smeared with a liquid-like look and feel, and the costume took an hour to put on. The prosthetics took 4 hours to apply. Grace also wore fangs, which bruised his gums. So, yay! That's a Sam Raimi checkmark of an actor being injured. Bruised gums. That's a new one.
Yeah, less violent than some of the other ones, but also chill.
Right. We also have Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy. Again, Gwen Stacy wasn't necessarily supposed to be in this, but the producers, wanted Gwen Stacy in this for whatever reason.
If it built from this, it's important to introduce her now and come back, right? Like, rather than being a brand new character, but also we know now with hindsight that this didn't continue past 2007, so.
Right. And also, like, when we get to talking about the ending of this movie, like, it she, it definitely alluded that there would be more, like, Gwen Stacy in the future. That being said, Bryce Dallas Howard actually thought this was kind of a little bit weird because she also was aware of the comics and knew that Gwen Stacy was Peter's first love interest, and she thought it was weird how she's the other woman in this. Since, they went with Mary Jane. And then for Captain George Stacy, Gwen Stacy's dad is famed actor James Cromwell. Now the rest of the casting doesn't really matter that much, but
not that they don't matter, but they don't change.
Yeah, yeah. But I will specify that this is the last film of Cliff Robertson before his retire and then his death in 2011. Cliff Robertson was the guy that played Uncle Ben. So this is his last acting role in a movie. I just figured, might as well mention that since that was pretty interesting. So that being said, we're done with background. We can go into plot now.
All right. So in Spider-Man 2, we kind of evaluated Peter's desire to continue being a hero instead of like prioritizing Peter Parker's life. In this one, we kind of see the opposite, where Peter is balancing the ego of being Spider-Man, letting Spider-Man be invasive into his real life. Kind of parallel that, morality in Peter's head with a symbiote that turns him into Venom, looking for a host. The whole thing is also propelled forward by Spider-Man going after the Sandman, who, escapes prison and falls into a testing chamber where sand spins around him and suddenly he's made of sand. Yeah. Look, the plot is cheese. It's absolute cheese, but it's pretty well executed for being cheese. That's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I mean, it works. That's the funny thing. You try to explain it to people, but it works.
Yeah, if you just fought the symbiote, it wouldn't be fun. If you just fought the Sandman, you'd be bored. Like, both things together really, really functions well, but he just falls into sand and becomes sand. Like, that's it.
Peter Parker also ends up like fighting Harry Osborn, of course, because Harry Osborn's now the new Green Goblin.
Yeah, well, sort of fighting him, and then not really fighting him, but then kind of fighting him, and then not fighting him at all. Yeah, it's a movie. It's a movie. Again, the plot, to boil it down, really sounds like cheese. The execution's really good.
All right.
I think the natural flow here is to talk about likes first, Stallman, because I feel like we need a bump from that from the plot. Damn it!
I thought we were gonna do a turn, as in we're like, okay, spoiler alert, we actually like this movie.
Yeah. No,
it's not as bad as you remember. It's actually pretty.
Yeah,
solid.
the sticking points now, 17 years after the release of this movie, right? There's a lot of memes about this movie. There's a lot of like really goofy fucking tropes. There's a lot of places where the writing lapses, and like it's pretty notable if you take it in like 2-minute chunks, right? But the movie's genuinely really good. I think that better than so in Spider-Man 2, one of our complaints was that like all of the plot lines got separated and you kind of started to forget about stuff.
Yeah.
And obviously there are enough plot lines here that like they certainly had the ability to lose themselves and do it the same way. But I think that everything blended well together, and the timing for things was super valuable here. So again, you watch this movie, the symbiote appears within the first 4 minutes of the film, right? The symbiote doesn't get reintroduced to you until you're an hour into the movie again, right? But it does a good job at the first instance of putting itself into like making you recognize that like, hey, this is going to become a factor. And then as Peter starts to go through the ego of being Spider-Man, it starts to reintroduce itself. When it really climaxes, when Peter's ego really climaxes, so then too does Venom, right? And so I think the timing of all of the pieces that they're reintroducing is super important. Even in Harry's timeline, where they get into a fight because you recognize, like, okay, we really have to address the idea that he knows that Peter is Spider-Man. So they address that first. He gets this bout of amnesia, right? He reintroduces himself to Mary Jane, and they start to get along, so that Mary Jane starts to become a plot line. He kind of recollects his memory and then balances out the idea of friendship and whatever else, and that he comes to help him fight in the end of the movie because the friendship overwhelms the idea that he doesn't need to fucking kill Peter Parker, right? Like the timing at which they reintroduce all of these plot lines back into you during the course of watching the movie, the timing and the like, I get significance, I guess, of the lesson Peter needs to learn here, right, is ever present. And they do a really good job at tying the timelines together at a point in time that makes sense.
I also have to say, like, with the exception of certain scenes that Tobey Maguire's in, which we'll probably get into dislikes on that, I honestly think the acting in this movie is the best it's ever been.
Oh, by a lot. By a lot. I think that it's harder now to just be like, Tobey Maguire, our autistic representation. Like, he's definitely still autistic, don't get me wrong. But it becomes much less in the way where it feels like he's too goofy to act. I think Mary Jane Watson has her best performance. And
Kirsten Dunst knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, this is her best by far. It's still not perfect, don't get me wrong, but it's still significantly better than she'd done in the previous two. I think Harry getting a bigger role and starting to feel comfortable rather than just being the brooding billionaire teenager is really good. I think Topher Grace was phenomenal.
Topher, yeah, there's so many people that complained about Topher Grace, but like he does a hell of a good job.
He, admittedly, when you say Topher Grace, I recognize that the kid's got acting chops, don't get me wrong, but also I always associate him with Eric Foreman, and so I can't see him outside of another character, right? But I think that he brings a level of like spunk and attitude and... joy isn't quite the right word, but he brings this like joyful exuberance to him, both as Eddie Brock and as Venom, where he's like excited to be doing the things that he's doing that really adds something to the character. I think even Bryce Dallas Howard, for her limited part, I think like really sold her role and made herself feel important. I think the casting here was genuinely terrific. Yeah,
and Thomas Hayden Church did a phenomenal job as Sandman with because
that raspy brooding voice is perfect. You didn't even need acting out of him, you just simply needed his voice, but then he also acted his ass off. Thomas
Hayden Church is freaking great in everything he does.
The voice. Dude, the voice, like that, you could use that to put me to sleep in an aggressive way, like go to sleep or else, with that deep rasp. Like I'm going to sleep and I'm going to enjoy being threatened that way, thank you. One of the other things that I want to point out for likes, I think I was going to say that I think the action sequences are really good. I think that they do a good job at utilizing every one of these characters to their fullest abilities. Both with the fight against Harry as they're fighting through alleyways in New York. I think the Sandman, I recognize again that it's corny and cheesy that he just turns to sand and he's invincible, but again, that they're using that to the ability, right? Then there's a flamethrower. Let's just turn the Sandman to glass, right? That like everybody is using everything in their arsenal to the fullest extent. It creates really good, like thorough action scenes. Instead of just being like a one-on-one fist fight for a lot of times that most action movies fall into, right? There's cooperation and teamwork and using all of the characters all at the same time.
And again, it's easy to follow.
And the choreography of the whole thing is just natural. It doesn't feel like watching the Avengers and it's just like, let's highlight why this guy's cool, and then this guy's cool, and then this other guy is also cool. Oh, that no-name character got assassinated now, but this guy's really cool, right? Like everything, it is a beautiful dance of all of these characters like intermingling all at the same time, and like you said, Stallman, easy to follow despite so many things happening to so many like wide abilities.
Especially that first fight scene between Harry and Spider-Man, because like how the camera just follows everything through like different different alleyways and corridors, like,
and through
the tracking in that's phenomenal,
and through a natural feeling set, right? Like, it feels like a genuine New York like alleyway because of the fire escapes, because of the clotheslines, because like it absolutely just feels natural, which is impressive for such a sci-fi type movie. Really good.
It's pretty damn good. Also, some of the special effects, like the sand, 9 times out of 10 just looks phenomenal.
Yeah. I think the only one that's ever really like egregious is
like the end.
No, I was gonna say, so as he's first discovering himself as the Sandman, right? And like, you know, he's a pile of anthropomorphic sand, and you watch him try to like transition into a man again, and that like very clear, very focused, let's put my skin back on, right? Looks a little bit choppy. But for the most part, like the sand is like, even modern day CGI, that's hard to pull off. And it looks really good. It really holds up. It really holds up. I would say, genuinely, that the Spider-Man action sequences here, as far as CGI goes, were worse than the Sandman, and the Sandman is hard to pull off.
Right. Yeah, like I agree on that. Like they spent a lot of time with that to make sure that.
Yeah. I think the last thing I've got here for likes that I've written down that's worth going over, despite all of the things that are happening in this movie at any given time, and despite the length of the movie, everything feels more concise. It felt like we have 3 hours of material, we made it 2.5 and it still functions, rather than we have 7 minutes of material, here's an hour and 45 minutes. You know, Spider-Man 2 had a lot going on, but it was also lots of places that they could have trimmed down the fat and made it a more faster paced movie. In this one, I don't know what you cut. I think everything that's in it adds some value, and even the stuff that's like fattening, right? Like the one that comes to mind immediately as I'm discussing it, right, is the crane is going out, breaks through a building. What's her name is falling out of the window, and Eddie Brock is there to take pictures. He introduces himself to the police captain, is like, "Oh, and I'm dating your daughter." It's 2 lines of dialogue, right? The value of it doesn't really matter for this movie in particular. But again, they did the thing that they wanted to add. They did it in 2 sentences, and then they moved on. Like even all of the million things that were going on felt like they were appropriately chunked out. There was everything that you got added some value. Like there was purpose behind every single piece of it. There wasn't a lot of fat to trim here, and for that's me giving Raimi a shitload of credit, because that's the one complaint I have about Raimi's storytelling.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I also like the fact that the ending is very bittersweet, you know, like, and what's also interesting is that even though like Peter and Mary Jane do have that dance at the end, it doesn't imply that they're together. They're just kind of like friends that are in mourning, you know?
Yeah, and like we said earlier, like obviously we know now that there's no fourth Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie, but also it kind of opens the door for that to be a pathway for him to matter more to Gwen Stacy, right? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and while it's not necessarily comic book adjacent, right? Like it also like opens the Spider-Man universe quite a bit. Yeah, I agree. I think the ending is good if you can open the door for a fourth movie to come.
Yeah, which for how many people that they kind of like had ideas for like different villains that were showing like characters who end up turning into villains, like they definitely had a lot of things planned out. um but that being said, I guess we'll go into dislikes.
I really only have one big one. And that is that it's super reliant on 1 and 2. I very much prefer the ability to watch an action movie as a standalone film, right? We've discussed that,
which was a positive of the James Bond movies.
right? Which was things that we've mentioned several times in this podcast, that like you have to be able to watch a movie as an independent thing. If I want to turn on a movie now, if I want to watch Spider-Man 3, I need to also have recent memory of 1 or 2, and that's a big complaint for me. They play back into the Uncle Ben stuff quite a bit. Boy, did they milk 5 seconds worth of acting from one guy and turn it into 3 goddamn movies. Holy shit! But I think that they rely a lot on the past. They rely a lot on things that were previously built to you for things to make sense. I don't know that this would necessarily be unwatchable if you haven't seen 1 or 2, but I also think that like to get the value out of everything that's happening, you really need 1 and 2 to be there. And that it kind of sucks.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a downer on this. My other complaint is the emo Spider-Man dance thing is very fucking cringe. Like, and honestly, it doesn't kill the film, but it almost does. You know, when you get to that point, but once it's gone, it's gone. You just kind of, you're like, well, that happened. And then you just forget about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that like it provides value in floating Peter's ego and recognizing things from the other side. Like I think it's got its place, but also I'm with you.
There's too. I just don't like the execution.
They lean into a lot of cheese. A lot of cheese.
Yeah. But that being said, there really isn't much. I mean, I know a lot of people complain about like Venom being rushed, but like, which I could kind of see, but at the same time, it's enough.
I think that like you kind of have to balance it with the idea that there are so many things going on. Like obviously the driving force is Peter's humanity in the whole thing and finding the Spider-Man Peter Parker balance, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of get that in the idea that like, oh hey, Venom's here. Remember when I smashed my head into a bell? What if I bumped 2 pipes together and then stabbed him? Right?
Yeah.
Like I get it. I understand the argument. It's not one that I'll make simply because I want this to all fit into one film instead of being stretched out to 5. But I get it. I don't agree, but I get it.
Yeah. That being said, I guess we're going to rankings.
Sure. You said you know where you're ranking this, and I got to look again, so I'm gonna let you have at it.
This is above. This is between Spider-Man 1 and Simple Plan.
Really? Okay.
I can't believe I'm ranking it that high, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, just because of, like, there's so many storylines that are being juggled together, and it doesn't drag.
I am not disagreeing that it deserves to be that high. Don't get me wrong. You're
just surprised I haven't.
You did it.
Yeah, I am too. I was literally thinking about just ranking it. Oh shit! Hold on. I was literally thinking about just ranking it on like above Darkman or above Spider-Man 2 because I do think this is better than Spider-Man 2. But more when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know, this is the first like Raimi film that's actually a decent length that we've watched where we're just like, wow, this really drags.
But it might okay. So the issue that I'm facing here, I'm putting it top 4 regardless. Okay.
Right.
At worst case, it's fourth because it's above Spider-Man 2. For all of the reasons that you mentioned, this is better executed. It does a better dance of putting things together. Like, for sure, fourth at the worst. My issue here is that I'm having difficulty comparing it to both Army of Darkness and Quick and the Dead because they're very different movies.
Yeah.
And I think that there is an argument to be made that this goes above Spider-Man 1. I think I'm talking myself out of putting this first, specifically because Spider-Man 3 relies on Spider-Man 1, which of course needs Spider-Man 1 to go first. So I think I'm gonna have to revisit this. I might adjust this again next week, but I think I'm putting it second. I'm putting it above Quick and the Dead. I'm putting this second and only behind Spider-Man 1.
I forgot you had a Quick and the Dead like that high.
I sure did. I sure did.
Because it's short.
No, because I think that like they for the same reasons that one was second, I think is the same reasons this one is going second, right? I think that they take a whole bunch of information, a whole bunch of plot line, and they deliver it in an effective way. I think that Spider-Man 3 is a more enjoyable movie than Quick and the Dead, which obviously gives it some brownie points.
I agree.
But I think that the combination of the casting and the acting and the CGI, and then above all else, just blending all of the different pieces of it together in a dance that works. Everything feels so natural, so fluid for so many hundreds of different things to be happening at any given time, right? I think it's got to get its credit, and I feel pretty good about second now that I've talked myself into it.
Yeah. So wow, we actually align up on that.
Yeah, I didn't expect to put it that high, but here we are. Here we are.
Yeah. So next week is going to be, I think, Drag Me to Hell.
I believe so. I think that's what you said.
I actually have to pull up Sam Raimi's thing because, like, unfortunately, you know how like a lot of things where Hollywood like has like it's Drag Me to Hell. It's like freaking Hollywood just likes to have like so many similar types of movies happen at the freaking same time. So I'm just like, is Drag Me to Hell the Sam Raimi one, or is it the M. Night Shyamalan one? It's like, no, the M. Night Shyamalan one's Devil. All right.
Fair enough. Well, I guess that wraps us up. So thank you guys, as always, for watching. You can check out the rest of the movie podcast here for 12 other Sam Raimi movies, eventually 3 more, or other directors that we've done. As Stallman mentioned earlier, the James Bond podcast. There's plenty of more movie reviews that we have done and will continue to do. 3 more movies left for Raimi. I think we have something planned for Christmas, although it's going to be significantly smaller than we originally talked about because timing sucks.
Yeah.
So I think we've still got one planned for Christmas, so keep your eyes open for that one.
Yeah, we at least have one planned for Christmas.
Yeah. I don't know what order these are going to post in because as we're recording this, I'm 13 episodes behind. Posted any of the YouTube. I'm bad at stuff. But so you can check out the movie podcast. You can also check out a whole bunch of gaming content from myself and friends. Then if you're interested in our own individual content, you can check out both of us on Twitch, Stallman at Traductus and myself at Ted Green Eagles.
I finally updated my setup so that way it makes the Twitch thing easier.
Stallman streams. Yes.
Finally.
But I think that wraps us up. So we will see you here next week for Drag Me to Hell. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next week.
See you later.